Offense around the NBA is exploding, but here's one crazy stat that proves it. In 2016-17, the KD-Steph Warriors became the most efficient offense in NBA history. They had 3 of the best jump shooters of all time playing within one of the smartest offensive systems of their era. But how would that legendary offense rank in the NBA this season? Not in the top 5, or top 10, or even top 15. They would be below average. In 2024, NBA teams are scoring at historic levels, and league executives are actively searching for ways to restore balance on both ends of the court. So how could the NBA possibly fix this problem? Well, I have a small change, and it could significantly help the league achieve its mission. Ten years into the NBA's three-point revolution, three-point shots now represent about 40% of the league's shots, but corner threes have surged even more. These 2 tiny areas now account for more than 1 in 10 shots in the NBA, and these short corner threes are a huge reason why we are seeing record-breaking offensive numbers around the league. But should this shot even exist? This is the biggest loophole in pro basketball, and players and teams keep exploiting it more and more and more. Aren't corner threes kind of boring? Is this loophole 3 even good for the sport? It may sound like a ridiculous question, but the more I think about it, the more I believe the NBA should tweak the so-called smartest shot in basketball. After the 2024 All-Star Game, Adam Silver was obviously annoyed. The East beat the West 211 to 186. It was the highest scoring NBA game of all time. And even though it was an exhibition, it was also the perfect epitome of the most definitive basketball trend of Silver's tenure. An unprecedented offensive explosion accompanied by a futile defensive showing. In 2014-15, the average jumper resulted in just 0.94 points. Fast forward to this season, and that number has jumped to 1.05 points per attempt. This graphic shows how the league's shot selection has changed over the last 20 years. It's like a different sport. Over here in 2003-2004, LeBron's rookie year, we see a league happy to use the mid-range. Over here in the present day, we don't see that. In fact, just 20 years ago, mid-range shots accounted for almost 50 points per game. This year, that figure is barely 17. As a quick reminder, the NBA's three-point arc is exactly 23.75 feet from the basket, except over here in the corners, where it is 22 feet from the rim. Why is this? Well, the court is 50 feet wide, and while a continuously shaped three-point arc could fit within the court width, a pure arc would not provide shooters with ample shooting space in those corners. And then the question now I get is, well, why don't we just widen the court, Kirk? Well, the easiest solution might be just to add a few feet of width to the baseline so we could have a constant three-point shooting distance around the arc, but here's the issue with that. A wider court is a non-starter with owners who are not interested in eliminating rows from the lower bowl. More dudes like this means more money for dudes like this. Thanks to pioneers like Bruce Bowen and Greg Popovich and others, NBA teams began to recognize the power of the so-called short corner three in the 2000s. When San Antonio ended the Kobe-Shaq dynasty in the 2003 playoffs, it was impossible to ignore Bowen's unprecedented corner three performances. In Game 2 of their second round series in 2003, Bowen turned heads by hitting 7 threes. He ended the game with 27 points, the exact same amount as both O'Neal and Bryant. But unlike those dudes, 21 of Bowen's points came from catch and shoot threes, and all but one of those threes came from, you guessed it, the corners. The 2003 Spurs went on to win it all, but the team's spacing changed the NBA forever. Soon everyone was trying to find the next Bowen to create more and more corner threes. But just 10 years later, the Spurs were bitten by their own snake when Ray Allen hit the most famous corner three of all time, a cold as ice, game-saving, series-saving, history-altering right corner three that gave LeBron James and the Miami Heat their second consecutive championship. A few years after Ray's dagger, these dudes started melting our faces and three-point scoring skyrocketed. But to this day, the league hasn't addressed the explosion in long-range shooting that has upended the look and feel of its games. When confronted with rising three-point rates, every other major hoops league in the world has moved their three-point line and made triples harder for their players, but not the NBA. You know, the league with by far the best shooters in the world, it has not done anything. And the cartoonish efficiency numbers we are now seeing around the league not only point to the idea that this shot is hyper efficient and smart for offenses, these same numbers are screaming, hello, this shot is too easy to be worth 3 points. League-wide, corner threes now go in over 39% of the time, and 30 of the league's top 50 corner three shooters make it more than 40% of the time. Any half-court possession that ends with a decent look from the corners is a fantastic outcome for any NBA offense, especially compared to the shots that made MJ, Kobe, and Dirk famous in the mid-range. Non-paint twos only go in 42% of the time. No wonder mid-range has become a relic of the past. Why shoot a 42% two-pointer when you can get a 40% three-pointer just a few feet away? Just for some old school context, Reggie Miller, widely considered to be one of the best shooters in league history, was a career 39% three-point shooter, which is awesome. But in today's NBA, an average corner three in the NBA is worth the same as an average Reggie Miller three, which is wild. The shot has turned average role players into Reggie Miller. Here's what I think the league should do. Have a consistent three-point shot distance that makes this shot a little bit tougher for the best freaking shooters in the world. Sure, this line would cause some more out-of-bounds calls, but it's about time that we insert a little risk for three-point shooters. If they want to be even more bold, the league should look at this approach, which eliminates baseline threes entirely. This is more drastic, but not even close to as drastic as drawing a freaking three-point line in the first place. That profound rule change disrupted the sport forever. Adjusting the line a little bit 45 years later isn't crazy. Modern offenses rely on the full extent of the arc to threaten defenses from every angle of the perimeter, making contemporary three-point defense nearly impossible. It's one reason we've seen the explosion in offensive numbers. This offensive style has made defending the efficient parts of the court tougher than ever. Current 5-out offenses are so effective in part because they stretch defenses beyond the breaking point. This change will force offenses to innovate. No longer would teams just stash two off-ball stationary players in the corners. They would have to find other things to do. Don't get it twisted. If you love the NBA in 2024, you love a product that has embraced major rule changes for almost 80 years. The quest for more balance in the association should start in the corners. Now it's your turn, Commish.